Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I'm always grateful. Let me start with some macro thoughts. Jonathan Ferro, who is at Bloomberg, tweets, China's imports from Hong Kong surged a casual 117% year on year. And he says, does inflating imports mean you can get your cash out? Home thoughts about Ouvry, a dear friend, and was the preceding Belgian ambassador to Kenya, tweeted this morning, quiet early morning wake up, Brussels airport, a sunny day ahead of us. I went to Charles Baudelaire for my home thoughts this morning. I have felt the wind on the wing of madness. I should like the fields tinged with red, the rivers yellow, and the trees painted blue. Nature has no imagination. I like this photograph by Niels Jorgensen and Shutterstock. This is a voice exhibition looking inside vocal tracks, restless minds, and speech devices to capture the elusive nature of the human voice. Political reflections. Let's start with the fact that Russian jets made simulated attack passes near a US destroyer. Two Russian warplanes flew simulated attack passes near a US guided missile destroyer in the Baltic Sea on Tuesday, the US military said. One official describing them as one of the most aggressive interactions in recent memory. The repeated flights by the Sukhoi Su-24 warplanes, which also flew near the ship a day earlier, were so close they created wake in the water. With 11 passes, the official said on Wednesday, the planes carried no visible weaponry, the official said. A Russia Ka-27 Helix helicopter also made 7 passes around the USS Donald Cook, taking pictures. The nearest Russian territory was about 70 nautical miles away in its enclave of Kaliningrad, which sits between Lithuania and Poland. They tried to raise the Russian aircraft on the radio, but they did not answer. Events were reminiscent of the Cold War, when a series of close calls led to a bilateral agreement aimed at avoiding dangerous interactions at sea. That was signed in 1972 by the then Secretary of the Navy, John Warner, and Soviet Admiral Sergei Gorshkov. The agreement prohibited simulated attacks against aircraft or ships, performing aerobatics over ships, or dropping hazardous objects near them. NATO is planning its biggest build-up in Eastern Europe since the Cold War to counter what the alliance, in particular the 3 Baltic states and Poland, considered to be a more aggressive Russia. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, joined NATO and the EU in 2004, have asked NATO for a permanent presence of battalion-sized deployments of Allied troops in each of their territories, and NATO battalion typically consists of 300 to 800 troops. Moscow denies any intention to attack the Baltic states. We cannot treat this as anything else than provocation, yet another example of a more aggressive Russia towards NATO, towards the United States, towards Poland. The USS Donald Cook had just wrapped up a port visit in the Polish city of Gdynia on April 11 and proceeded out to sea with a Polish helicopter on board. The first incident took place on April 11 when 2 Su-24 jets flew about 20 passes near the Donald Cook, coming within 1,000 yards of the ship at about 100 feet in altitude. This was followed by even closer passes by the Su-24s the following day and the passes by the Russian helicopter. My conclusions are Russia remains very much on the front foot. They have reset Syria, showboated some spectacular military hardware gains. I think that's undeniable. I think the real challenge to the US comes from China. and that because of a bureaucracy that was brought up on the Cold War and the big bad bear, the US is losing its focus on the panda by continuing in this Russian groundhog type attitude. And really, if you look at a map of NATO and you see how far it's expanded since the Second World War, you see the issue is in very stark relief. Carter is to visit the Philippine base near the disputed Spratly Islands. He's in Manila amid tensions between the Philippines and China over Chinese militarization of features in the China Sea. Carter's arrival Wednesday follows approval by the Philippine Supreme Court of a new agreement between Washington and Manila to allow US rotational military forces on Filipino bases spread across the archipelago. I do not think 1 versus 2 is a serious idea at this moment, i.e. the US versus Russia and China. The US is currently triangulated between China and Russia, in my view. Put up a photograph of the Su-24 attack aircraft flying over the US guided missile destroyer USS Donald Cook, and another one of a Russian Sukhoi Su-24 attack aircraft making a very low pass close to the USS Donald Cook in the Baltic Sea. Take you back to my piece I wrote in October 2015 about Putin and how he is a geopolitical grandmaster. And then I like this headline in Bloomberg: worried about Russia's economy? Give Putin a call on his hotline. But this was the interesting point which some people are missing. The authorities have only one trump card, and that's the president. Putin's perception of himself has changed during his long rule, Putin said. If before he regarded himself as a manager, now more and more the elite called him the sovereign. Put up 2 photographs when POTUS and Vladimir were not getting along. Both, I think, were taken at APEC. I'll show you the first one, and then another one here, which is of awkward moments there as well. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad casts his vote next to his wife Asma inside a polling station during parliamentary elections in Damascus, Syria, in this handout picture provided by Sana. Obviously, the other side is going to denigrate this election. Let's move on to international markets, which are proving fascinating. Look at this chart of negative interest rates across the globe. It's pretty extraordinary. Germany's DAX jumped 2.7% yesterday and clocked a close above 10,000 for the first time since March the 30th. Let's move on to the currency markets now, where we have had plenty of movement. Let's start off with the euro 112.54, dollar index 94.96. That 93 area is really key. It's holding for now. Japanese yen backed up to 109.40 earlier this morning, now at 109.24. Swissy 0.9671. The pound 141.26, beginning to soften up again. Asian currencies took a big hit, but the Aussie is now up on the day at 0.7666. India rupee 66.604, South African won 11.5455. The Real 349.71. Remember, we'd hurdled 4 a little while back, but we've had a rebound in higher beta currencies, and the Real participated in that. The Egyptian pound 8.88, and the Rand back at those levels where I started by saying I should short it, so we'll short it some more here. 14.6184 when I checked this. The yen has rallied almost 11% since January the 29th, when the Bank of Japan announced it would charge financial institutions for a portion of the funds that they park at the central bank. The Topix has fallen 5%. The banking index has taken the big hit, down 15% since that time. Dollar yen, let me put up a 1-year chart of that. We're now at 109.24. Backing up ahead of a move, in my opinion, back to 105. Put up a photograph of Haruhiko Kuroda, who's the central bank governor in Japan. I'll put up a 1-year chart of the dollar index. As I said previously, the key area of support for the long-term bulls is 93. We should see it base out ahead of that. Singapore surprise policy easing spurs Asia-wide currency rout. Singapore's dollar slumped the most since August, dragging down other Asia-Pacific currencies as surprise easing by the central bank fueled speculation. Other policymakers in the region will follow suit. The New Zealand dollar, the ringgit, Indonesia's rupiah also weakened after the Monetary Authority of Singapore said it would seek a policy of zero appreciation against an undisclosed basket of currencies, returning to a neutral stance it adopted in the global financial crisis in 2008. Singapore's central bank cited a less favorable external environment in its policy statement. Singapore's dollar slid 1.2%, biggest drop since August 11. The New Zealand dollar dropped 1.2% as well, but it's recovering a little bit from earlier in the morning. Nestle sales beat estimates on Nescafe and Nespresso coffee. World's biggest food company reported third quarter sales that beat analysts' estimates as Nescafe and Nespresso were boosted by marketing to ward off competitors in coffee. Nestle invested money into marketing in the fourth quarter, which actually dampened group margin in 2015, but is now paying off. Let's move on to the commodity markets. Gold, let me put up a chart of that. We're currently at 1241. We've popped up actually since the early morning. 1250 remains the key pivot level for gold, and we seem at the moment unable to hurdle it. Ahead of this meeting in Doha, we've had a pretty tremendous rally in crude oil, to be honest, which certainly went further than I expected, I have to admit. But let's get back and look at it as it is now. Russian oil output is at a record. Have a look at this from Bloomberg. OPEC output is at a record. Have a look at this from Bloomberg as well. I think you now look to sell. Obviously, you can jump on any news, but I can scale in sell now and hopefully establish an average in WTI, let's say around these sorts of levels, 42.22, or a little bit higher. Let's move on to Africa. South Sudan rebel deputy returns to capital as part of a peace deal. Deputy chief of South Sudan's rebels has returned to Juba as part of a peace deal. The main opposition leader, Riek Machar, is expected to return to the capital to work out a unity government. Alfred Ladu Gore, a former general and minister, spoke about peace on arrival, saying, "He came here to proclaim peace, and I have come to reaffirm that peace will not be reversed." Interesting piece in The Guardian saying if there is no credible signal from South Sudan that this time things will be different, then they will get far less than what they could get. It's not just the donors who are losing patience with South Sudan's leaders. Citizens who feel the brunt of the crisis are increasingly vocal about their government's failures. There's a lot of corruption in the government, says a retired colonel who's been waiting for hours to get fuel. People in the army and government are benefiting from the black market fuel business, says the man. It's the ordinary citizens who are left with nothing. Normally, you would consider these situations pretty revolutionary, but you've got a military government essentially in power. How Liberators Turn into Oppressors, a study of southern African states by Henning Melba. Since coming to political power, the anti-colonial movements of Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa have remained in control of the former settler colony societies. At best, their track record of running the countries they helped liberate is mixed. From the oil oligarchy in Angola under Jose Eduardo dos Santos and his family clan, and the autocratic Zanification under President Mugabe, to the presidential successions in Mozambique, Namibia, and South Africa, all these movements embarked on what could be termed state capture. I think that's a good point. Charlie Robertson at Renaissance says South Africa has slipped to third place in Africa in 2015, and Nigeria's economy is as big as the 42 smallest in Africa. Have a look at his diagram. African internet bandwidth increased 41% between 2014 and 2015, according to a Telegeography Global Internet Geography report. Angola should ease forex law to help the oil sector, says TGI. A law from 2012 requires companies in Angola to pay suppliers and salaries in the local Kwanza currency, while last year the central bank ordered businesses and citizens to cut foreign exchange use by 50% amid a dollar shortage. That dollar shortage has continued. Deafening silence from Ethiopia, foreign policy in focus, talking about how state securities have killed hundreds of protesters, arrested thousands in Oromia, Ethiopia's largest region. It's the biggest political crisis to hit the country since the 2005 election, but has barely registered internationally. With the protests now in their 5th month, there is an almost complete information blackout. It's a big challenge for Ethiopia, actually, as it moves forward. You can't just carry on with that degree of repression. You've got to free up the society. How that is managed is going to be a key challenge. South African all share spiked 1.69% higher yesterday. It's up 4.43% this year, and it's 886 points below its 2016 high reached on March 18. The Rand gained as much as 1.1% to 14.5344 per dollar, the strongest level since December the 9th, when Zuma unexpectedly removed the finance minister Nene. So there's been a big rebound in South Africa, and I think it's more of a vicious short squeeze because people have gotten so bearish. And a sense that the South African president is now mortally wounded, and therefore, arbitrary policy making is not going to be as we're not going to see so much arbitrary policy making as we were seeing previously. I'll put up a 6-month chart. I think you sell it again. Egyptian EGX30 up 5.92% so far this year. Obviously went into a bull market not too long ago. A year after he took office, President Muhammadu Buhari's strong preference for command and control style economic measures over market-driven policies, so-called Buharinomics, is showing serious signs of stress. Nigerian President Buhari, here you see him arriving at the People's Republic of China, and here again President Buhari and his delegation formally welcomed to China by President Xi Jinping. Now we've heard that they're going to give them a facility of $6 billion, but I still think the elephant in the room is the Naira. Nigerian all share down 13.98% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 4.89% so far this year. Taiwanese deported from Kenya suspected of fraud in China. A group of Taiwanese deported from Kenya to China after being acquitted of cybercrime are wanted for suspected fraud in China, the Chinese government said on Wednesday, in a case that has enraged Taiwan, which has accused Beijing of kidnapping. The Kenyan government said that people were in Kenya illegally and were being sent back to where they had come from. Only 22 countries recognize Taiwan as the Republic of China, with most, including Kenya, having diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, with its leaders in Beijing. Put up a photograph of police escorting a group of people wanted for suspected fraud in China after they were deported from Kenya as they get off a plane after arriving at Beijing Capital International Airport in Beijing, China. ICC spells doom. ICC failure spells doom, says Raila Odinga in an interview on AFP. The ICC's failure to try top Kenyan leaders for crimes against humanity in the country's worst violence since independence spells doom for global efforts to fight impunity, formerly Kenyan leader Raila Odinga said. Despite this setback, African countries must not quit the International Criminal Court, as the continent is the biggest violator currently of human rights, the ex-Prime Minister said. War crimes judges dropped cases against Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta at the end of 2014. More than 1,300 people died and about 600,000 others were left homeless. ICC said it was forced to declare that defendants had no case to answer because of a relentless campaign of witness intimidation, as well as Nairobi's refusal to cooperate, a charge that Kenya denies. Listen to this. This decision spells doom for the international justice system and fight against impunity. Odinga, who was declared the runner-up in the 2007 vote, said, "Now he regretted no African head of state needs to fear being tried by the ICC because you can destroy the evidence, you can kill witnesses." The ICC allowed itself to be blackmailed by Kenya, he says. The Business Daily is reporting a story around Chase Bank. You'll have to have a look at it because it's very in-depth, saying sharp differences between senior managers of Chase Bank and auditing firm Deloitte on how to handle assets in the lender's possession under the Islamic banking window triggered a rapid-fire series of events that led to the bank's collapse. Business Daily has reliably learned that the outcome of the 2-week audit row is what pushed the SME-focused bank over the cliff, leading to its closure on April 7. Chase Bank found itself in a tight position after the Central Bank of Kenya directed it to restate its financial results to show the significant changes in its insider lending position that arose from the differences over the method of accounting for the lender's Islamic bank assets. And this is a question of how these assets were treated. They're saying that this is what's being said in the article. It's not clear that these are the facts. In the article, they're saying that a ton of money was lent on an Islamic basis with no lien, no collateral. A bunch of folks are saying that that is how Islamic financing works, and Deloitte have jumped the gun. But let's see how this pans out. Kenya shilling at an 8-month high, 101.07. Nairobi all-share snapped a losing streak. We can see the all-share retreat 1.844% from the 7th of April, closed marginally higher yesterday. NAC 20 down 3.25% year-to-date, and it's fallen 3.57% since 7th April. Barclays down 24.63% here in Kenya, and at a multi-year low. National Bank as well, down 39.04%. And at a multi-year low. Heathrow's slot sale earned Kenya Airways 5.3 billion shillings. That's according to the Business Daily. That's good news. Bouvi very bullish now, talking about turning a profit within 12 months. Let's see how that all pans out. Once again, thank you for stopping by.